Good afternoon. My name is Nadine Dereza. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Sibos Today. And for our first item, my co-presenter, Stephen Cheer, earlier on interviewed Satvinder Singh, the global head of institutional cash and security services at Deutsche Bank.
And welcome to the second Sibos Big Interview. I'm Stephen Chia. Today I have with me Satvinder Singh, who is head of institutional cash and securities at Deutsche Bank, also known as the confident tightrope walker in rebalancing his bank's businesses. Satvinder, tightrope walker?
Better than a snake charmer, right?
I guess so. Well, thanks for joining me this morning. We want to talk about global transaction banking. I mean, is this a trend that you think is set to continue in the long term, and why?
So I think if you go back to global transactional banking, a lot of banks were in it. And a lot of banks found love for the transactional bank post the crisis in 2008. And the reasons were very simple. It was an annuity-based income, very client-centric, not a lot of volatility, didn't take up too much capital, and was very centric from a client perspective. So that was the impetus for a lot of banks to discover the love for the transactional bank. However, in the last 7 to 8 years, what we've also found is a lot of banks are retreating from it. So while there was increased competition, a lot of banks have realized you need global platforms, global scale, global investment. And you need deep pockets to be in this business, because this business is about technology, it's about operations, it's about supporting your clients' requirements. And that requires, in an environment where we are currently, regulatory environment is changing, infrastructure is changing, client demands are changing, you need to invest.
So those that are pulling back, you're thinking they're realizing that it may be more than they can handle?
I think what they've realized is to stay afloat and to increase revenue, you've got to invest significant amounts of money, whether it's investment on core infrastructure from a stability perspective, or it's investment from a regulatory perspective, or it's investments on KYC, anti-money laundering initiatives. Just staying alive requires investment. That's just the base. Then to grow your business, you've got to have the right talent pool, you have to have the right client base, you have to have the right forward strategy. That takes a lot of time, a lot of investment. And unless you have a global platform, it becomes very difficult to compete, because eventually your clients are global.
That's right. So you really have to be in it for the long haul. Well, what are you guys doing at DB?
So from our perspective, earlier this year, we reiterated our commitment to the transactional bank. So as a part of Strategy 2020, the bank made a very clear statement around the transactional bank. We want to stay relevant. We want it to be a business that we're investing in. And we've made a very strong commitment in terms of that investment. So going back to what I said earlier, the bank recognizes the only way to grow the transactional bank is to invest in it. So the investment we've very publicly stated is €1 billion of technology investment over the next 5 years, which is a significant up from where we are today. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is allowing the transactional bank to grow and providing it with the balance sheet that's required to grow. So we've done that as well. And the third part is making sure that as we grow the business, we're able to hire and attract the best talent in the market.
But do you think we're in an era of transaction banking? Are we ready for that yet? I mean, otherwise you guys may be gearing up, but if it also requires a partnership, collaboration with others outside of your control.
Sure. So if you look at the environment we're in today, I think it's perfectly poised for global transactional banks who are committed to staying in it and who are invested in it. And the reason I say that is if you take a forward view, if you look at regulation that's impacting capital markets, and if you look at businesses that are impacted by it from a scale of 1 to 10, transactional banking is impacted, but you have a lot of our markets and banking businesses that are significantly more impacted, consume significant more capital, and therefore with a forward lens may not be as attractive as a transactional banking business or subsets of the transactional banking business. And I think that's what's really important when you look at it from a 3 to 5 year horizon. We've gone on record saying we believe this is the decade for transactional banking, and the reason why is we see client opportunity. We see the regulatory environment is there, but it's less intrusive than it is in other parts of banking, and we see a huge opportunity from a talent perspective. We're actually now, if you go back 10 years, we may not have been able to attract the best of the best. Now we have graduates who want to join transactional banking. We have mid-career executives who are willing to give up a corporate finance or an M&A trajectory and move into transactional banking, and we have senior executives. And I think that is the real forward for the business.
So you see that as a way forward, and it seems from what you're telling me that others are seeing it too. But I mean, again, this vision, it must be shared not just by you. It needs to be an effort that also requires many other banks to come on board for it to be a fully integrated system that eventually will reach out to your customers.
Sure. So and if you look at the global landscape of transactional banking, you have local banks, you have regional banks, and you have global banks that operate in that spectrum. A recent review of the transactional banking fee wallet, one of the consultants did this, estimated the global pool for transactional banking fee wallet to be 250 billion. And that they anticipated doubling by 2020 to 500 billion. That's a staggering number. And that's a staggering number if you look at the number of players in it, the opportunity in it, the potential upside. Where the issue is how do you tap that? How do you tap that from a perspective that you're still having stable systems, you're still compliant with regulations, you're still investing in it? That, I think, organizations that can get that balance right are actually going to be the winners in the future.
Well, that is the challenge, right?
Yes.
I mean, for many to evolve and to change from what they already have to what might be coming. And as you mentioned earlier, it requires, a lot of time, or dedication and commitment to that format. But again, in this era of, quick fixes, instant noodles in that sense, we want everything so quickly. I mean, from a consumer's point of view, but also for institutions and banks, they have KPIs, they have shareholders, they have different requirements they have to fulfill. Will many of them be willing to make that commitment?
Again, going back, commitment to your own point, transactional banking is not instant noodles.
Yeah.
It cannot be. By the inherent nature of what we do, we can't go in, we can't go out. Transactional banking is not an episodic business. It's not a transaction by transaction business. It's long-term relationship driven. A lot of our clients today would have been our largest clients 10 years ago.
Right.
We bank them for years and years. We're part of their infrastructure. We're part of what they deliver to their own clients. And I think this is what we really genuinely need to understand why transactional banking is so important. Because eventually, it's the movement of cash, it's the movement of securities, and we enable that for our clients. And sometimes our clients are intermediaries themselves, it's their underlying clients or their clients of clients. So that's the infrastructure we provide, and therefore it cannot be an instant noodle solution to it. So therefore, having a long-term view, and that's why when we went out with our strategy, the bank made it very clear, we're not investing 50 million in the next 1 quarter. We said $1 billion over 5 years. And that, I think, is the time horizon of investment that's required. And that gives you the right balance between what we need to do from a short-term perspective, but also investment in medium to long term. So where do we see the trends in the industry?
Right.
How do we capture those trends? Where do we see opportunity come in? And we've taken a step back and said, where do we think clients are going? And we've taken a very, very, I think, aggressive approach on that. And we've said, actually, we don't think clients are going to look at simple vanilla products that transactional banks have excelled in. They will want complex, multi-asset, multi-jurisdictional products and solutions. And we've tried to capture that. We've gone out to our clients. And our conversations at Sibos over the last few days and over the next few days are not necessarily just going to be on single opportunities. They're going to be around themes. What are you doing with liquidity? What are you doing with collateral? What are you doing with balance sheet optimization? What are you doing with risk? What are you doing with regulation? Those are the broad topics, because a lot of our clients are exactly like us. They're large financial institutions that are trying to find the same solutions we're trying to find. So we're working with them.
Well, that was going to be my next question about your clients, because if you had to convert them as well, to your point of view, that would be another challenge. But if you're saying they're already on the bandwagon, I mean, it's more about, the only thing I can see is if you work with this generation, it may be a family business, an institution where, the next generation comes in. Will they have the same vision in line with what you guys have? And again, because it's such a long-term view.
Sure.
How do you sustain that?
So if you look at it from a client perspective, it's actually very interesting. So I've been in this business now the best part of 2 decades. And if I go back earlier on, clients used to buy on 3 or 4 very simple parameters. You had to be competitive in price, you had to be competitive in service, and committed to the relationship. Those are the 3 or 4 broad parameters. Over the last few years, that buying behavior has changed quite dramatically. Those things are constant. Nobody will give you a mandate if you can't provide the service at a competitive price and you're not committed to the business. Where we're seeing a big difference in buying behavior is how connected are you to the regulations? How much can you influence? How much do you understand? How much can you interpret the regulations in terms of what it does to us as a provider and to you as a client? How can we make you more successful in a changing environment? And then the killer over the last 2 years in my mind has been how committed are you? Can you demonstrate your commitment to the transactional bank? Are you scaling it down? Are you breaking it up? Are you investing in it? And those are the clincher conversations that we're having with our clients. And our ability to demonstrate, one, we're a division of 4 divisions in Deutsche Bank. Second, we're investing, and I gave you the numbers earlier on. 3, we're winning fantastic mandates that we've been able to advertise externally to the wider universe. That has given a lot of our clients the comfort that they need, that we're fully committed to the business.
Okay. Well, let me ask you then, and move on to talk about standardization, because ISO 20022 is one of the big buzzwords around. I mean, is that a platform that you think will be effective, and how challenging is it to, again, get everyone on the same page?
It is hugely important that we have a common standards across, right? So whether it's ISO 2022 or it's SWIFT registered other things, whether it's KYC, whether it's AML, across the value chain in which transactional bankers operate, we need as much standardization as possible, because a lot of our clients use multiple providers. We need that standardization to be able to talk amongst each other as well as transactions flow from one institution to the other, one is buying, one is selling. That standard language is hugely important. Otherwise, we'll all be spending money on duplicative infrastructure. And we've seen examples in recent industries where there hasn't been standardization, whether it's in DVD formats or VHS formats or broadcasting formats, where organizations have gone their own way only to discover there's a dead end because the rest of the industry hasn't followed them. That's why a lot of the debate that we have at Sibos is around standardization, because it gives the industry the backdrop that it needs to move forward.
But that's assuming that everyone agrees that this collaboration, this partnership will be effective. It's a win-win. I mean, they have to see that, because otherwise they might be protective and say, well, this is my turf. I don't feel the need to open up to share. I mean, they may not have clients who have such a long-term view. Would that pose a challenge for other institutions who, because again, on a global scale, if only some people talk to each other, but not everyone's talking, then you don't get that seamless flow.
And I think, Stephen, that's a really interesting point. The transactional bankers have had, in my mind, to change their mindset. So the industry per se, over the last 2 decades, has needed to change in the way it perceives opportunity. The earlier opportunity that we saw was, I can do everything. End to end, I'm your transactional bank, I can provide you with all the solutions, I will give you the one-stop shop that you need. And that's always been our pitch. Over the last few years, we, particularly at Deutsche, have changed that mindset. And it's been triggered by industry changes, infrastructure changes happening in Europe. So Target 2 for securities completely changed the way we look at settlement. So as much as we'd like to go to clients saying we can do everything end to end, we've broken up our solutioning and we've created what's called an open architecture. So there are bits, components of what we can offer. As a client, you have the option of taking everything. As a client, you can plug and play into the various modules. And we've also collaborated with an ICSD to provide the solution that's required. So we made that announcement last Sibos. Yesterday, I was on a panel talking about the security services business, where it's going. And I said, that's where we need the industry to actually embrace this. We need to change the way we think, because the forward on our industry isn't we can do everything by ourselves. The forward is, where do I really add value? What do the clients pay me for? And if the clients don't care what this part of the value chain does, then let's find a better way to do it and more efficient way and potentially cheaper way of doing it, because the client sees value on this end of the spectrum. And if that's where they see value, that's where we should be investing.
So what's your view on something like T2S then?
So T2S, I think from a European perspective, has really changed the way we look at settlement in a European context. It's actually catapulted Europe from where it was many years ago to probably best practice from a settlement perspective. We're creating a settlement engine that will be uniform across multiple markets. Clearly having the right political and the currency and the ECB behind it was a huge advantage. but we've created something that will be used in a European context to the advantage of the industry. It will harmonize settlements. It gives a great perspective to the way things will get done in Europe. So huge fan, huge supporter. As an institution, we've always been behind the initiative, personally, hugely committed. The best part is, it's actually opened up fantastic opportunities, because what it allows clients to do is not only look at T2S from a settlements perspective, which is what it's meant to do, but the second order impact and the third order impact is actually more significant. The impact it has on liquidity, the impact it has on collateral. Amazing. And again, from a value chain perspective, settlement is one part of it. There's liquidity, there's collateral. And if we can end-to-end optimize all of that, clients end up in a much better place than they are today. And I think that is something that's worth looking at when we expand T2S potentially, not necessarily as a concept, but as a philosophical way of looking at settlement across Asia, Middle East, other places as well. What can we learn from it, given the local environment that we operate in?
Let's talk a bit about innovation then. How important is technology in helping GTB move forward?
So if you look at the transactional bank is about operations, technology with a service layer. And then we customize it from a client perspective, we customize it from a product perspective. But the essence of a transactional bank in operations and technology. So you cannot underestimate the importance of technology in terms of what we deliver to a client and the importance of stability, scalability, efficiency from a platform perspective, because that's what we sell to clients and that's what clients buy. Innovation, hugely important. And the reason why innovation is hugely important is not because our clients expect us to come up with weird, wonderful ideas every single day. They expect us to come up with ideas that help them become more successful. So as we look at technology as an enabler, what can we do? Are there solutions out there that we can predict? Can we use algorithms to predict client buying behavior? Can we do that from a data analysis? Can we go back and give them the data that they need to make better decisions, to make the flow work better? What can we do to enable technology to help our clients? And that actually, if you look at where we are today, it's 2015. A lot of Sibos over the last 2 days has been about technology. Is technology an enabler or is it a threat? And our view organizationally has been very clear. Technology has to be viewed as an enabler. The head in the sand approach to technology has resulted in institutions completely disappearing. Why? Because they didn't embrace it. So what we've done as an institution is we've looked at various components of the evolving new technology that's coming in. Blockchain, for example. We've set up innovation labs. We work with various fintech companies as well. What we want to do is, from a holistic client perspective, give options. See what's available in there, what's best of breed, search the new technologies that are out there, and see how we can combine the nimbleness of a small technology company with the size, scale, and volume that we bring, and a client mandate that we bring, and put the two together. That, for us, is a great combination.
So you're offering that partnership to your clients.
Absolutely.
I'll ask you to do a bit of crystal ball gazing. Let's say 5 years from now, where will we be at with GTB?
In some institutions, it will be a major business. In some institutions, it'll be broken up into 20 different pieces, and it'll be difficult to spot where they are. And the institutions that are totally committed to it will appreciate what it does to them. It brings them client centricity because you're at the core of the client, you're working with their operations, you're deep into the client, that's number one. You're deep with the regulators. Our understanding of the evolving market, what the regulators are doing, is second to none, because that's how important it is. It's huge from a career perspective, opportunity perspective, diversity of career opportunities we can provide our team and be able to do that is absolutely phenomenal. So 5 years later, this trajectory continues. We're going to be even more central than we are. We're going to be having these conversations more and more as to what the transactional bank did to rediscover itself and to position itself. But I think the numbers at the end of the day will speak for themselves.
Just one last question. As we, since we're here in Singapore, in Asia, I mean, how big a focus do you think Asia should be in terms of on the radar of banks in this day and age right now?
I think from a global bank perspective, so our organization, Asia is huge. And the reason why Asia is huge is potential for opportunity. the opportunities on both ends of the spectrum. One end of the spectrum with foreign investors putting money in, that we enable. So we bring foreign investment into the country, whether it's India, Indonesia, where we have domestic custody operations, and that transcends across the Asian landscape that we have, or the other way around, Asian investors investing overseas, whether they're issuing DRs, whether they're doing an escrow transaction, whether they're looking at investing in the Middle East or in Europe or in the US markets. We enable that to happen. From both perspectives, given the size, relevance, and growth opportunities we see in Asia, it's a region that has consistently outperformed others. And that's a region we're totally committed to. We see huge client interest in it. And ultimately, where we are, where our clients want us to be. And our clients want us to be in Asia because our clients think this is a growth region as well.
Okay, well, Satvinder,
thank you very much.
So much. Thank you for sharing with us. Just in speaking that with Satvinder Singh.
Well, thank you, Satvinder and Stephen, for a really thought-provoking interview. And our next item is a subject very close to my heart, diversity. I'm very excited to be at the centre of this discussion with the leading lights from the diversity session. And joining me are Stephanie Kollerick from Bank of America Merrill Lynch. We also have James Sun, who's founder of Perk. Adiza Tajani of Level 39, and she's head of ecosystem development. And finally, Lisa Robbins from Deutsche Bank, head of global transaction banking for Asia Pacific. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
And I'm going to start by reading something out to you. Now, Viola Davis recently won Outstanding Lead Actress in a drama series during the Emmys, and she said, "Let me tell you something. The only thing that separates women of colour from anyone else is opportunity. You cannot win an Emmy for roles that are simply not there." So when we think about diversity, it can mean many things to many people. It could be ethnicity, gender, it could be conscious or unconscious bias. But the point is that the roles are simply not there for many people. So would you say that's true for the financial or fintech industry? So if I can start with you, Stephanie, and just let everyone know your full title is Global Custody Product Head.
Okay. Thank you, Nadine. So I don't think it's true in the same way in the financial and fintech industry. I think there are a lot of opportunities there. The difference is whether or not people have access to those opportunities. Are they aware of them? Do they know how to find them? Do they know how to access them and apply for them? And I think that would be the difference I'd put. The opportunities are there. It's whether or not people of any sort know them, know how to access them, and know how to develop them.
James, do you think the opportunities are there?
Well, I come from a little bit different perspective. I'm in the startup fintech world, and the stat I'll give you is less than 3.5% of VC funding is going to female founders. That's a problem.
Yeah.
I think the money's out there, but there's no doubt about it that the funding is not going to the female CEOs. So is it a question of not enough CEOs that are female, or is it a question that there are implicit biases that are happening? And I would conjecture, even from a male perspective, but a minority perspective, that because I'm from the US, that there is hidden biases in the venture capital world right now.
Adiza, hidden biases?
So being from London and the UK, where we are in Level 39, we actually have 22% of our members are women, and that's much higher than the industry average, and we focus on startups and entrepreneurs, so it is changing. And
But it's still very low at 22%.
22% is much higher than the industry average, and if you look at the industries we work with finance and tech companies predominantly, and for that industry it's actually pretty high. But we should never be complacent, and we have a number of different programs at Level 39 to help change that, including programs like Code First Girls, which improves the talent pipeline to the entrepreneurial sector.
And the talent pipeline is something we'll come back to, because I think that's the sticking point at the moment, isn't it? We're not getting enough people through the talent pipeline to really reflect the diverse communities that many of you serve as customers. Lisa, how about you?
Well, I'm more on James's side here. I think that there are lots of jobs available. It's access to those jobs and opportunities that may be lacking. And I think there's a really great example, which many of you may be familiar with, which is the study that was done with orchestras, where there were blind auditions, and male and female musicians auditioned behind a curtain. Before the audition, only a small portion of musicians in these orchestras were women. After the audition, it reached 50%. So I believe that we have unconscious biases that actually may drive all of our behaviors. It's not just a gender issue. And there are opportunities to actually change that.
Well, that's a fascinating study, isn't it, to do it
Yes,
in that respect. So I think, check it out if you haven't seen that before. If not, what do you think needs to be done to ensure there are equal opportunities?
Well, I think as we're saying, it depends how you frame the question, right? So, are there equal opportunities? But one of the things that you find in financial services as in other industries is at junior levels, there's actually quite a high percentage of women and minorities, right? So they're getting in the door, not maybe as fully as they should be, right, but getting in the door. So the question then is back to the unconscious bias, how do you keep and retain and grow that talent, right? And what kind of unconscious biases exist in the organization that perhaps rewards a specific characteristic, a specific style that, is not as commonplace among women or minorities, right? So I think that's where the focus is. And certainly at Bank of America Merrill Lynch and many other companies, right, we're quite focused on understanding the unconscious biases and addressing them.
So how do you make sure that people stay on board, and that middle management area where that pipeline, that's where it seems to trail off, and as a result we're not getting enough people into executive positions to create that diversity?
Yeah, it's certainly challenging. I don't think anybody can say that they've cracked the code on it, but I think the first step is awareness, it's focus, it's lots of programs. By the way, those programs aren't only for women or for minorities. We have a program for working dads, as an example, right? There's lots of different scenarios, different lifestyles that folks have where they need a specific type of support from an organization.
And you talked about the gender balance as well. It's not just a women issue. When you're talking about gender, men also have.
Right. And there's childcare, there's aging parents, right? It's a really a wide array of challenges that the workforce faces that need to be addressed with a wide array of programs. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
So James, how are we going to address this? How are we going to address equal opportunities?
Well, yeah, like I said, I don't have the answer, but I have hope, and here's why I say that. I think that we've made tremendous progress in at least my country, in the U.S., but globally. But I think there's a lot more progress to be made. And where I have hope is our brains are wired, and Aristotle actually talked about this, where our brains are wired in associative behaviors. And so the more that we see two things linked, the more that we actually believe that they actually exist. And so in order to solve this, I think we do need more presidents that are female. And I think we need more executive CEOs that are female, leaders that are female, and minorities, so that we start rewiring our brains. Because what we saw when we were young was the leader was always on TV and it was a male.
Well, should we have a quota system though? In Scandinavia, this is something they've been doing to great success, although it doesn't seem to have filtered through into that middle management level. But is it a start at the least?
I think I'm a little ambivalent with a quota system per se, but what I think we should do is look at the traits that are very different between male and female and actually acknowledge them and show that for this kind of position, here's why the female traits may be very good for it, and here's why the male traits may be very good for it. Because right now what we're doing is saying, oh, we're all the same, but we have implicit biases. No, let's not talk about we're all the same. We're not the same. We have equal rights, but we have different strengths.
What are your thoughts on a quota system?
I think that a quota system isn't necessarily the best way to go.
Not even to start with?
I think that you need to have an approach that actually can be central to the core of the business rather than siloed. And I think it's been shown that having 3 women in the room makes more of a difference than having 2. And one of the reasons is said to be the fact that the internal female rivalry stops because actually you have 3 women in the room, and that's more of a better way of playing it. But how do we actually make that happen? In our senior leadership team, we do actually have a number of women, but I've been in a number of meetings where I'm the only woman in the room, but I'm able to deliver and execute. And so people don't even think about the fact, oh, she's a woman. People think about the fact that I'm able to deliver and execute. And the more that women are shown to do that, the more that opportunities will also be given.
Well, at least this panel reflects your factor of 3. We've got 3 ladies here. So there we go. So hopefully we've satisfied you there. Quota system. Are you behind that, Lisa, or not?
Well, I'm of two minds. I think, not to quote another example, but Vivian Redding said it best that she didn't like the quota system, but she liked what it did. So I think it does help to kickstart. That being said, I think there are other things that are as important to look at. And I would say to address the issue, we really need 2 things. We talked earlier about unconscious bias. We talked a little bit about the need for youth programs for men. I think there are really 2 aspects, in my view. One is policies and mechanisms that encourage people to stay in the workforce. And these policies should not just be for women, but for men. There's so many men who may not feel comfortable saying that they're going to their child's theater performance, but maybe they would feel comfortable saying they're doing something else, and they should feel comfortable as well. They should have parental leave. They should have a whole host of things that are basically would help them to feel more comfortable opening doors. The second thing is we need attitude. So they really, in my view, have to go hand in hand. The attitudes, unconscious bias programs, a whole host of things, combined with very conscious policies within organizations to help drive a holistic change.
But do you think organisations are going to be flexible in their approach to adopt all of this?
So I think that attitude is also to do with culture, and the culture in your organisation needs to also encourage these sort of decisions, because if the culture throughout your organisation actually frowns upon people going to collect their kids from work, or frowns upon the fact that, you know what, if somebody doesn't enjoy going for beers and they're isolated, then that has a wider impact on the attitude of how things are approached.
But many organisations are run in that command and control style. So we're talking about a flat, flexible hierarchy here. Do you see evidence of that in your industry, James?
Well, I think for sure in my industry, if you actually start hiring, I hire a lot of millennials, and if you told them that this is our hierarchical structure, they'll say, well, there's the door, I'm leaving. So I definitely see in the startup world that it's work on your own time, work in your different offices. It's not the same office structure anymore. The relationships are different. It's very flat for sure.
And Stephanie, a recent McKinsey study on the power of parity shows how advancing women's equality can add $12 trillion for global growth. So it's good for society, equality and diversity, and it's good for the bottom line.
Absolutely. I think we're in a environment right now, in a time right now where the attitudes are changing. There's studies like that out there that are proving to folks that there's a real business rationale behind diversity and equality, not just a social one. But like with many things, it takes a while for the organization and the culture to catch up to that, right? And I do think we're in a transformation. The millennials are joining. They're changing the culture, and they're encouraging folks to have a more flexible workplace in order to attract and retain the talent of everybody. So I think we're heading there, but I do think it takes time, and I think there's some other industries that are probably a little further ahead than financial services that we can all look to, and banks aren't necessarily early adopters of everything, but I think there's a path forward.
Well, thank you very much for an excellent discussion. And I must say, we could carry on all night, couldn't we? So I'm sure we'd like to do this one again at some point. Well, my co-presenter, Stephen Cheer, took me on an evening tour of what must be the most vibrant and colourful part of Singapore, with all the lights ready for Diwali in a few weeks' time. Stephen, we're in Little India, and
Yes.
this is a real bustling, historic part of Singapore, isn't it?
We are in the heart of Little India. I mean, it spreads quite a wide area, but right where we are is where many of the folks would gather. In fact, right behind us, one of the oldest temples that is in this area of Little India. There are quite a few, and in fact, it's interesting because Singapore is also a culture of many different religions. You know, we've
How many religions are
well,
there?
there are largely folks who are Chinese, the Chinese, the Malays, the Indians, and what we call Eurasians, or anyone else in the other races. So the main religions would be Buddhism for the Chinese, or Christianity, but also Muslim and Islam would be the other main religion, and of course Hindu for the Tamils.
So obviously we're in Little India at the moment, and Diwali just around
Yes.
the corner.
Yes.
One gets that sense of excitement. This is going to be a real hit happening place, isn't
In fact,
it?
as we go about later on, you'll see as it starts to get a bit dark, some of the decorations are already up on the streets. And what's changed, though, is that this used to be, a place where I guess traders would come. You know, there'll be businesses, but in the old-fashioned way. There was even a race course here. Many eons ago. There is a road called Racecourse Road right here in Little India.
Only in Singapore.
Only in Singapore.
Vibrant air, isn't it? There's painted shops.
That's right.
Beautiful Indian fabrics are here. So let's go shopping.
Why not? So right here, you get the flowers, some of the garlands that they could use as they visit the temple.
So when do people buy these typically for? Is it for a celebration? Why would they buy these garlands?
I think they would, that's why it's right here across the temple, so they could bring it to offer as an offering, I believe. I mean, but we should ask the guy. I'm not the expert in this area, I have to admit.
You're not a florist.
No.
Yeah.
The car's kind of running around, and
Did your son like that?
maybe for about 5 minutes. See your fabrics and colors, largely for making saris.
Well, I wonder how much a typical sari would cost. So, for example, I wanted this fabric.
Right.
How much would that cost?
These are $27.
27.
$27.
So you just buy the material.
Buy the material, 5.5 meters.
I see. But of course, we're coming to Diwali as we call it here as well, and the Festival of Lights, which is why the decorations are coming up. And I think as it comes closer to the date, this place will only get more busy as people stream in.
Well, you've got a couple of sarongs.
Right.
This shop sells everything. You've got bangles, CDs, DVDs. I mean, it's Bollywood heaven, isn't it?
That's true, a bit of everything. These lovely bangles.
Yeah, you think
He can find you the size.
the size.
I think I better buy one for my real wife.
Yeah,
Otherwise she sees me on TV buying it for another woman, she might get
Yes.
unhappy, right?
absolutely. And I don't want you to be unhappy. Well, I'm very hungry, and we've just found a typical Indian vegetarian restaurant.
That's right.
What can I find
Let's
here?
take a look at the menu and see exactly what they have. Of course, they'll have samosas, these are some of the knickknacks. What's more interesting, I think, in fact, this is a bit like Chinese food, but they've got this, the
dosa.
Yeah, so it's a bit like a pancake, a thin pancake, very popular, very light. I think
Plenty
you
of
would like
rice
that.
options.
Plenty of rice options with the curries, of course. These are the breads, like tandoori roti. It's a bit like what we call roti prata, and like naan. I think if you're familiar with that, for dipping in the curries.
Well, that's enough looking. I think we should
Okay.
do some eating.
Sure, let's go in.
Go. And like all food in Singapore, it was a delicious meal. So do try to visit Little India before you leave Singapore. It really is one of the most fascinating and beautiful areas of the city. Well, joining me now on the Sibos couch, I'm delighted to say, is Julia Streets, by day a merchant banker and by night a stand-up comedian. And she's responsible for the much-loved but much-feared Sibos quiz. So, Julia, welcome to you.
Thank you very much.
And I love the fact that you've got your quiz master
I
jacket.
invested. No, talk about good investment. I invested this. I thought I saw it on the in the shops last weekend. Went perfect for the quiz.
So you're hot-footing it to the quiz after this.
I
Now,
am.
this is the
These are the
Swift
questions, yes.
Institute quiz.
That's right.
Has anybody seen those questions?
No. They've been locked away in my hotel room safe. Literally.
What's this quiz all about if nobody knows what we're talking about?
Well, so I was approached by the Swift Institute probably about 2 or 3 months ago by Peter Ware, who's the director. And he said, you know, we're quite keen to do something a bit different this year. Would you write us a quiz? Because he knows I do stand-up comedy and he knows that I kind of have an interest in the foibles of business. So he said, would you write a quiz? So we've spent all summer basically getting a long list and working it down to a short list of hopefully decent questions for this afternoon.
Well, I'm glad you're using your time productively over the summer. So give me an example of a question. Let's see if I know the answer.
Well, so actually, just leading on from the previous panel.
The diversity panel,
The diversity,
yes.
yeah. So
Okay.
there was an Asian benchmark survey
Right.
about gender. And so the question is, how, on average, those companies with the greatest female representation, how much did they add to their return on equity?
Guessing around about 47%?
That's absolutely spot on.
No.
I can't believe you got that right.
Really?
That's amazing.
Yes. Oh, God, I'm going to come and do this quiz
Come
later.
do the quiz.
Oh, is that easy? I'm sure I could win a prize.
I think I need to rework some of
No.
these.
You actually did tell me the answer beforehand, so we've got to reveal, haven't we? Everybody knows I'm not that much of a genius. So how many questions, and what's the format of all of this?
Well, we've got 2 teams. We've
Yeah.
got 2 leading academics, accompanied by 2 leading bankers. So no pressure there then.
Yep.
And basically, they're playing against each other. We've got buzzers, everything. It is
Wow,
just,
high
I have
tech.
to say, Swift have pulled out all the stops. And there are 8 rounds, 65 questions in total. There are some twists and turns, so you don't know where the scores are going. And they're playing for a trophy.
Oh.
They're actually playing for a trophy. So hopefully it's going to be the first of many.
Now, I'm intrigued to find out, actually. I know you're very up there with the quiz and all that, but merchant banker by daytime,
Well,
jokester by night.
right. So actually, I'm not a merchant banker. I have to confess, I'm
Okay.
not a banker. I run a consultancy
Yeah.
all about fintech. So actually, tomorrow's the Inner Tribe final. So I've been working with some of the Inner Tribe finalists. So that's kind of my world. So level 39,
Yeah.
we were talking about earlier, and so all my materials based on corporate life.
So not just banking world.
Not just banking, partly banking, lots of city material, lots of corporate behavioural material, observational comedy. And what I found was there's a gap in the market.
Yeah.
Because a lot of comedians don't like being in offices, whereas I run a business. So actually, my shtick, if you like, is exactly that gap in the market. So.
You mentioned about Inner
Yeah,
Tribe you're involved in,
yeah.
so go on, give it a plug.
Well, so Inner Tribe's been going for, I think it's 7 years now. And obviously, this is the whole world of fintech innovation. And I think it is an amazing initiative that they've had a global competition. The finalists are being prepped, literally squirreled away in a room now, prepping.
I can see them.
Their presentations are coming out tomorrow afternoon, and they one of them is going to be judged the most important company by the crowd here at Sibos. So
And get a financial investment as a result?
I actually don't know what the terms of the winning is. I haven't paid attention to the money side of things, but much more on the kind of the innovation and the entrepreneurship side. But I'm sure, you should ask the Swift guys that. But there'll be an incentive.
Maybe
I'm
you
sure.
can give them your jacket for goodwill.
Well, for the right price, obviously. It's
Yeah.
going to take a while to get it off me.
Well, Julia, I hope you're going to come back and tell us how the quiz went. So
Yes, I gather tomorrow morning.
Yes.
I'm going to drag along the winner, or
Yeah.
one of the winning team,
Yeah.
and we'll see. Yes,
hopefully not
they'll tell
drag.
you.
They'll come with great joy
Well,
and
they'll be
delight.
celebrating. They'll be out late tonight, eating in the India quarter.
Well, thank you very much to Julia. I think those are all excellent suggestions and ideas for what to do tomorrow. And good luck for the quiz. And remember to join Stephen and I for Good Morning Sibos at 8:30 tomorrow morning. Goodbye and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.